We have 5 questions that we'd like to ask you over a few topics that a lot of our classmates are concerned about.
Okay.
So our first one is just kind of an introduction one. So just telling us about yourself, your career, your education, your background, and why that makes you such a strong candidate for the board.
Sure. So my name is Jaime Bayes, and I have been on the school board in Rockwood for the past 6 years. So I'm running for re-election, and I'm doing that because a number of reasons. Number one, I just believe in giving back to the community that I live in. And so for me, it's been a natural progression from when I have 2 high schoolers and an elementary age student. So when the high schoolers were young, I just started getting involved at that level, and it just sort of moved through different ways of giving back over the years. I think being on the school board is something can be very rewarding, and it's an ability to represent all kids. And that's why I do it. As another example, I helped co-found Rockwood Gives Back, which is an organization in Rockwood that supports kids and families and staff whenever they have a need. So it might be financial, it might be furniture, it might be, lots of different things. And that similarly stemmed from me working with students in our classrooms, volunteering, that, I just started noticing they weren't thriving like I'd seen them thrive before. And when I dug a little bit deeper, I realized that those were some of our students who are homeless. They were living in hotels, and I thought we are a great community in Rockwood. We can help support this and help remove some of these barriers for some of our students to be able to come in and learn better. So I could have just looked at it from that one student's perspective, but what I thought was, there's students just like this all over our district. So how can we make a bigger difference in a broader way? And so that's kind of how I look at being on the school board. I could be, and I still continue to volunteer in my kids' schools, but I can make a big impact for all kids if I am at this level. My background is, my degrees are both in education from St. Louis University. I have worked in a number of different places. I worked actually in an anesthesia department at SLU and started a quality management program back in the day. So I have a really crazy work history. And my husband was in the military and went to medical school. And so we moved around the country for that. And it brought us back to St. Louis. And we chose to come to Rockwood because we knew that that's where we wanted our kids to go to school.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Our next topic has to do with inclusion and diversity. So Rockwood has a history of promoting diversity and inclusion throughout the district. Do you plan on advancing these initiatives? And if so, what policies or alterations are you hoping to bring to the table?
That's a great question. So one of the things I've been most excited about this past year has been the development of the beloved community. And I don't know if you all are, how familiar you might be with that, but there's a plethora of information on the Rockwood's website. Last July, the board signed a resolution stating that our support for increased diversity, equity, access, and inclusion in Rockwood. And, I think that we can always do better. I think one of the best things about this past year has been the progression of that work, despite dealing with all the struggles of a pandemic. And, the way I look at that is just every student in our district is on a continuum line where everybody needs some kind of a service or something to make it equitable. And that applies to every single student. And, some kids that might be CCL. For some kids, that might be special education services. For some kids, it might be services that Rockwood Gives Back can provide. I think being able to have a staff that is diverse is important. I've served on some HR committees in the past that, I know that that's always looked at, and we've always tried to recruit more teachers and administrators that can represent the students that are in their buildings. I think all of those things are important, and I really support all of the work that's being done among our kids and among our staff, because there's great work being done, in the high school level for sure as well. So I appreciate even this conversation today that you all are doing is important for all of this.
Great. So, as an incumbent, I'm sure you had an integral role when it came to Rockwood's plan at addressing COVID-19 and the pandemic and everything. So, my first question is, were you satisfied with Rockwood's approach to the pandemic? And if not, were there anything that you would want to change? And then also, as we are getting into the 21-22 school year, do you have any ideas or plans you'd like to implement to make sure that the transition from in-person or from virtual to in-person learning is safe for both students and staff?
Yeah, COVID, this pandemic is something there's been no playbook for and nobody's ever dealt with in the past. And I think one of the biggest areas that has been affected by this has been education. And, aside from obviously the medical community, I think that the information was changing so quickly last summer that as decisions were being made, I mean, I recall being part of meetings, all day meetings, sitting there and one plan would be in place and people would be planning for it. And literally you'd get that out and 10 minutes later, there'd be a recommendation to change that entirely. So
Wow.
I have a really good perspective when it comes to how that was coming in quickly, how all of the stakeholders were being considered throughout all of that. But at the forefront had to be the safety and health of all of our, students and all of our teachers. The board actually only voted one time, and that was August 6th, about whether or not we would be in person or not. And, that was one of the most difficult board decisions I've ever had to make, only because I know that kids belong in school. I know that, but it was not safe at that time. So I do not regret the decision that I made, the vote that I made at that time. I don't regret the path that we took at that time. I think if you break it down among this huge 150 square mile district and you think, could communication have been better? Yes. Could there have been things we could have changed about, our timeline in certain areas? Yes. I think that one thing Rockwood's always been really good at is looking at a crisis, and I would consider this as a crisis when we're talking about crisis planning. And we hold these big workshops annually, and we look at all of the people in our community, from police to firefighters to paramedics, and we get together in a room and we kind of game plan and we talk about, if a tornado comes, what is our approach going to be for that? If we've dealt with something in the past, like an active shooter drill that didn't go well, how can we, look back and reflect and make positive change on that? I think we absolutely have opportunity to change and improve some of the minor decisions and things that were made. But I think having the kids and the staff safety at the forefront was always on everyone's mind. There isn't a single person that is in this district that I've ever worked with that doesn't have a heart for those things. And so, I think given the fact that that was all taken into consideration, as well as the fact that we were one of the first school districts to bring kids back safely, and we had good mitigation strategies in place, and we developed our own internal tracking strategies to have our own data, was hugely helpful. And we have really innovative people working in our district. We have nurses that are just phenomenal, and they are, reaching out and sharing best practices, and they're enrolling us in studies with SLU and WashU, and they're, doing everything they can, because everybody's learning and collecting data this entire year. Everybody is. Nobody had a playbook for what this is going to look like. So I really appreciate all of the experts that there are in this district who can use their skill set to find those ways that we can improve immediately and ways that we can look back historically over this past year and know about positive change moving forward.
Yeah, it's really great.
The next topic is sustainability and environmental awareness. So climate change is one of the main problems that our generation will face, and many school districts like Parkway and Clayton are taking steps to make sure their districts are more sustainable. How open are you to supporting such actions? And if you are these policies that would be more environmentally friendly? Are these policies that you would support in the future?
That's a great question. I always appreciate these conversations. This is definitely an area I'm not an expert in, but I feel like between our facilities department in Rockwood and our financial department in Rockwood, I feel like we hear quite often about good change and positive change that's being made in this area, particularly when we have new spaces being built, like the STEM labs and the new elementary school. And there's been a new extension of, I think, Wildwood Elementary. I believe that's the one I'm thinking of. So they have brought in some best practices for some of those areas. Ameren has come annually the last few years to present us with a refund check and sort of a pat on the back for some of our practices that we do in terms of our just improvements on lighting in the district. I know that we are swapping out every time we have the opportunity to things that are more environmentally friendly. And, all the way down to we've had a student come in and present about the dangers of styrofoam and getting rid of that in the district. And I think that was a really impactful presentation that student did. And I think it's a no-brainer. Like, yeah, let's get rid of the styrofoam, right? So yeah, I definitely support it. Whether or not, I think a lot of times, sometimes we don't really look to write and implement policy all the time so much as we might just look at best practices and things like that. So certainly whatever we could do to support those things I would be in favor of.
Yeah. All right, that's really great. And my last question is about student mental health. So as an incumbent, I'm sure you were there when a group of students earlier this year did give a presentation about mental health in Rockwood. And because of the prevalence of, depression, anxiety, and other such mental disorders, what steps are you planning on taking to support students and their mental health so that it isn't as big of a problem in the future?
This is such a tough one, and it is super heavy on my heart. So I have two high schoolers, and my oldest, that's a senior, lost a classmate a couple of years ago to suicide. And it's someone she had been in class with since she was in kindergarten. And I won't ever forget that. And, I think that we have another opportunity here to do what we can as adults in collaboration with kids, with you all, with kids your age. That student group from Marquette that came and spoke, I had seen some of their earlier work when Ashish did his original video on Instagram. I think it was Instagram back in the day. And it was very touching to me. I watched it twice before I think it went away, and I reached out to a few people and I said, we need to support this gentleman, and he's got some real passion for this, and I think that's what it's going to take. But I think it's also a larger community effort, because I think there's opportunities for parents to really be involved in this and to work as a community to know that, this isn't just a problem within our schools. It's a problem within our community, and it's a problem within our country. And so how can we all really educate ourselves in a way, but support each other and do everything that we can? Because if you don't have good social and emotional health and support, really none of the rest of it matters. So, you're not going to be thriving academically if you're struggling from a social and emotional standpoint. And
Yeah.
if you are, it's really rare. So I think there's a lot of great opportunities. There's really good organizations in Rockwood. Again, our student services team has done some great work in this area in terms of looking at the social and emotional health of our staff by bringing in Alive and Well to do some trauma-informed care training and things like that. Our teachers have so much on their plates, and I know this weighs on them a lot, but they are really great champions for our kids. And I think there's many opportunities there, but I'm really excited about the work that student group is doing. And my hope is that could be something that we can build off of, from making connections among high schoolers and maybe even down through middle school. And I even look at like our anti-bullying campaign and how we've worked on having anti-bullying ambassadors. And I've participated in that training with kids before. Those kids are amazing. Kids have so many great ideas. Kids have so many unique ways of reaching out and supporting one another. And I see that with my own two kids when they're concerned about a classmate or a friend or someone they know. And those are the important pieces. So I know I'm rambling a little bit, but this is something that's really on my heart a lot. And I really support it. And I hope that there are more ways that we can implement, whether it's programs or just good best practices, that we can all work together and try to make some headway on this, because the data that group shared is very alarming. And we've got work to do for sure.